Welcome to the Technology Alchemist, your source for technology advice, strategic technology planning, technology coaching, time-saving advice, and a pragmatic look at increasing revenue and profit through your technology engine. I'm your host, the Technology Alchemist himself, Mike Mahoney. Now, today's show is sponsored by your Virtual CTO. Your Virtual CTO is a technology services company specializing in increasing your revenue and profit through an examination of your technology engine. Your Virtual CTO offers exclusive coaching for business leaders that is the only business coaching program that includes technology as part of the program. If you want to learn how you can make more money by tuning up your technology engine, you can learn more at getyourvirtualcto.com. Today's guest is David Fullmer. He's a leading immigration attorney based in Los Angeles, California. He's practiced immigration law for 25 years and is a partner at the national law firm WR Immigration, rated among the 10 largest immigration practices in the United States. David is the former chair of the immigration section of the Los Angeles County Bar Association and was named by Best Lawyers as the 2021 Los Angeles Lawyer of the Year for Immigration Law. Most of David's work is dedicated to helping U.S. tech companies hire non-U.S. tech talent. David is expert at guiding U.S. companies and non-U.S. tech talent through the maze of immigration laws so that employer and employee can both accomplish their respective goals. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Michael. Happy to be here.
Yeah, real pleased to have you here. So tell me a little bit about this giant quagmire that we call our immigration system and how it relates to tech talent.
Well, yeah, the U.S. immigration system is quite complex. I get a lot of questions from people all the time. How come people can just kind of wander across the border and automatically start working? And truthfully, that does not happen legally. The Congress set up a really quite detailed set of rules. And in order to work in the U.S., an individual has to qualify according to certain legal parameters. And one of the categories that's wonderful for companies that need tech talent is the H1B category. And that allows for an employer to hire a foreign national if they are working in an area that requires specific bachelor's level training and if the individual has that bachelor's level training. So that's how technology kind of comes into play here with immigration.
Awesome. So you mentioned that people feel like people just cross the border and then they can start working. But, you know, like my own wife came here from Canada and we had to, go through the immigration process. One of the things I'm curious about is it seems like a lot of more industrialized countries like our own have a little bit slightly different process for immigrant, except for Canada, which is actually worse than ours, I think. But what is the logic behind accepting an application for someone to adjust their status, but not allowing them to work while they're here? Like, how do they expect the person to take care of themselves while they're here?
That's a good question. And I've asked myself that a lot of times as well. But at the end of the immigration process, there's this form. It's called Form I-485 that one files to apply for the green card if they've already shown that they qualify. And it can take at least a year for that form to be processed, sometimes more. And unfortunately, just by virtue of filing that form, one cannot automatically work. There's another form that's filed with it. It's called Form I-765. And through that form, an individual can get a temporary work permit while the I-485 is pending, but it takes at least 6 months to process that. So there's a period of time when an individual cannot work. If I were writing the rules, I would definitely say yes. As long as you qualify, you should be able to work as soon as you file. But unfortunately, that's not the system. The good news is that under the current administration, processing times are picking up. So that's a little positive light, even for these temporary work permits.
Yeah, I noticed what we noticed was that you get to a certain point where they've decided that the last thing they need to do is have the interview, but they're pretty sure they're going to approve you. And then they ship, like in my wife's case, they shipped her a work authorization card so she could work. But I know like in Canada, we actually looked into immigrating the other way, sending me there. And regardless, you can't work for first 2 years. So you kind of ask yourself, well, okay, you're letting me in your country. You're telling me that now this person who's been feeding one mouth now has to feed two. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but it's obviously people have a strange, they say have a strange outlook on immigration, because they think it's all just people walking across the border, and they don't realize how many people fly in here and overstay their visa, or whatever.
Definitely.
It's a huge number. So what is like okay, if my company wanted to hire somebody and bring them over here from say Singapore, what's the process?
Well, mentioning Singapore is very interesting, because the U.S. does have a special treaty with Singapore for something called an H1B visa. And so it would be much easier to bring someone from one of these countries where we have a treaty than from the rest of the world. The special countries that get special treatment are Canada, Mexico, Singapore, Chile, and Australia. Kind of a random group of countries, but these countries have kind of a special deal with the United States, and they can get visas for professional specialty occupation workers pretty quickly. And the rest of the world has to go through this H1B lottery that happens every March and April. And if the companies and the employee win the lottery, then they can start working in October.
I had no idea there was a lottery. That's very interesting. So even there's no guarantee for those people that they're going to be allowed to come over.
Right. No, there's no guarantee, which makes it very difficult. The way that most foreign workers get introduced to U.S. companies is that they start as foreign students at U.S. universities. They graduate, and after they graduate, they get a 1-year work permit that's called OPT. And so through this OPT program, it's meant to allow these graduating students to get exposure to the working world. They get to know these companies, the companies like them, and so then they file for their H1B. And then, based on the numbers this last March, there were about 303,000 people who applied in the lottery, and there were just over 85,000 who were selected. So you can do the numbers. The chances are 1 in 4.
Yeah.
And so it makes it difficult for companies who they get to know a worker, they like them, and then they may not be able to keep them.
That is tough. I think the list of countries that you gave that we have special arrangements with is interesting to me, especially Chile. That's kind of an intriguing one to me. Australia doesn't surprise me, neither does Canada. I mean, they're very similar to here. Even the way they do their immigration is very similar to here. But that's extremely intriguing. So, like, are there any special requirements that a company has to show, like as a need, or anything like that, to bring someone here from another country, or is it just a matter of, hey, I want to bring this person here, I want to hire them as an employee?
Yeah, mainly it's that they do have the need for the worker, and that they have the ability to pay them. Most of these visas have a prevailing wage requirement, which means that a company cannot pay them, dirt cheap wages and exploit them as foreign workers. They need to pay them what U.S. workers in that particular area are getting paid. So sometimes it's a healthy wage, especially for technology workers. So they have to have the willingness to pay them, and they have to have the need for that type of worker. But They don't have to have anything. It's not really as much as you might think. A brand new startup with 3 employees would have as many chances at getting an employee as a multi-million-dollar publicly traded company. There's no benefit in being large necessarily.
So when you initially decided to go to law school, did you intend to do immigration law, or did you have a different intention?
Actually, I did intend. I'm one of the few people who really wanted to do immigration law. And it was when I wrote my personal statement to get into law school, I wrote there that I think I want to do immigration law. And that's how it worked out.
What attracted you to that?
Well, it's an interesting story. Couple things happened. I took off 1 year between finishing my undergraduate degree and going to law school. And this was in the 90s when Japanese tourism was huge in Los Angeles. And so I was working for a company that dealt with Japanese tourism. And I had 2 colleagues. They were my supervisors, mentors, friends, and they were from Japan. They were here on L1 visas. And one day they called a company meeting and said, everyone, your two colleagues have to go back to Japan. And we were shocked, and we asked why, and they said because their L1 visa extensions had been denied. So this is my first introduction to work visas, and it was very personal because these people were they were great employees, and again, they were friends and mentors. They had to leave, and so I started thinking about that, and that was in my mind when I was getting into law school, and that ended up being what I ended up doing.
Yeah, so it made you want to help those kind of people out. That's really admirable. I mean, I know when we were, what I find really interesting about immigration law is when we were talking about bringing my wife here, I went to see an attorney, and he basically told me, well, there's the right way and there's the legal way. And he's like, the right way would be to have her apply, while she's in Canada, and go through the consulate there and all that. He said, but the problem with that is that if that person at the consulate decided, you know what, she wore a purple dress today and I don't like purple, so I'm denying her, you can't appeal it. But if you do it what he called the legal way, she comes here as a tourist, then you get married, and then you apply for adjustment of status. If that immigration officer denies her because she has a purple dress, you can appeal that to an immigration court and get it taken care of. And I found it really weird that, like, for one, the right way is to be outside of the country, and yet they have an option for you to be inside of the country when you do it. So it was sort of intriguing to me, but I understood, like, obviously the legal ramifications. You want them to make their decision based off of the merits of your situation, and not because they didn't like your personality or didn't like how you were dressed or whatever. So that was sort of, I just got a kick out of that, and I remember that to this day, that it's the right way or the legal way. And I mean, in the end, it worked out for us. It was a really interesting process because I feel like people should use an attorney for the process, because trying to get in touch with the right people, it's next to impossible. And now with COVID, she had to make a phone call to immigration about something in this past year and could reach nobody. Like, it was just like crickets. So
the new system is all computerized. It's all a computerized voice, and you have to know the right words to say, or you will not get through to a human being.
Yeah. So you need someone like you who knows what they're doing with your staff too. Okay.
And they didn't teach us that in law school, but we get certain knowledge just because we're in the trenches working with these agencies every day. Yeah.
Years ago, I used to be a litigation paralegal, and you'd get to know, like, each courtroom, what their rules were, what time they liked things filed. There was even one courtroom where even though they really would like things filed in the morning, the clerk preferred it after lunch because it was less busy and she could spend a little more time with the paperwork. But
same with immigration.
Yeah,
definitely.
you just get to know the people, right? And it's from doing it day to day. I mean, that's all it really comes down to. That's interesting though, because I think that a lot of people are under the impression that, okay, if you're in a high demand industry and we don't have enough people to fill those roles, that almost anyone could come here. But the reality is that there's a lottery, and like you said, a 1 in 4 chance, which isn't great. I mean, if someone told you, hey, I want you to invest $100,000 in my business, but there's only a 25% chance you're ever getting your money back, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't invest the money. I mean, that's too high of a risk. 75% chance of not getting your money.
But there is and one thing I wanted to add for employees who are in technology, who may have a U.S. Degree with a major in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, there is a possibility to get a 2-year extension of that 1-year initial student work permit. It's called a STEM extension. So if a student is majoring in the STEM area, and if an employer qualifies by participating in what's called the EVerify program, which I could talk about more if you want, then the student can get 3 years of automatic work permission instead of just 1. And that gives the employer 3 chances to apply in this lottery. So in a way, the numbers would say that if there is a 1 in 4 chance and they apply 3 times, that there should be a 75% chance. Right.
So tell me about EVerify then. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, sure. EVerify is a federal program that's kind of an overlay to the I-9 program. We all know what I-9s are. All U.S. employers have to verify that every employee they hire, whether they're a U.S. citizen, green card holder, or some type of foreign worker, they have to verify their identity and their ability to work. And the EVerify program is a federal program that an employer, well, in California, they can voluntarily sign up for, and it will allow them, the employer, to check the documents provided by the employee to make sure they're legitimate through a federal database. In California, it's optional unless a company is a federal contractor. In some states like Georgia, or Arizona, it's mandatory for all employers. But the benefit to an employer, if they EVerify, again, voluntarily in California, if they have one of these STEM students that are foreign students, then they can get the initial 1 year plus 2 more, 3 years of work permits without having to hire somebody like me to do a visa application.
Yeah, so it saves them money. I mean, I think that's the intriguing thing about that is people don't realize how many fake documents are out there that get used, and so being able to electronically verify those documents is huge. I mean, I know a friend who he married somebody and filed income taxes for years and years and years, and then 1 year when it switched to electronic, he got a thing back saying his wife's social security number didn't match the name on the filing.
Wow.
When he questioned her about it, it turned out that she'd come here from another country. Brother-in-law who lived here paid $100 for a social security number of a deceased person, and it of course didn't catch up to them because you're just filing paper, and they don't really double check it. But once they went computer, he double checked it, and that's when it was like, uh-oh, you don't have a real social security number. You're not even legitimately here. You better fix that.
That's going to cause some marital problems, I think.
Yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine the shock of that? Like,
right.
You're not even supposed to be in this country, let alone working. But yeah, that's I think EVerify is a good thing, just because it keeps people honest. I know, like, I have my opinion on immigration is just like, I've paid for my wife. I paid several $1,000s to get my wife over here. I think there should be a cheaper way, but I think people should have to do it the legal way, only because it just makes sense. If you want to come here, I think the path to come here should be easier than it is, but I think there should be required that you follow it. And if you didn't, you should have to leave. It's that simple. But I think the path is way too complicated. I mean, like you mentioned, when you were talking about just getting the ability to like convert your status and then work, there's 3 forms involved in that. And
right.
what people don't grasp, but they've never done it. When we did the application for permanent residency, it was like this thick, the paperwork.
Definitely. No, there's more than 3 forms. Actually, there's the I-130, I-485, I-131, I-765, and the affidavit of support, I-864. Well, why can't they combine them all into one form?
Yeah. Right. Well, especially that's what we found. Like, you're repeating the same information over and over and over. And then she ran into a big problem in that this was really intriguing. They send you for biometrics. So you have to get your eye scan and fingerprints. And when they sent her there, whoever typed up the order misspelled her name. So she shows up at the center and like, this isn't you. Well, yes, it is. Well, no, it's not. Well, yes, it is. You can see that I have all that. Well, thankfully, she found a manager that fixed it for her.
Right.
But literally, he told her, we could have sent you back because this was done wrong. And then it was someone else's mistake, but she was responsible for fixing it, which was really interesting to me. But the whole process was really eye-opening because, of course, they require a physical, and the doctors that do these physicals, most of us wouldn't go to their office for a regular checkup. They're kind of sleazy. But it was an eye-opening process because here she's coming from Canada, obviously one of the preferred countries too, is from what we've talking about. There's treaties on that, but yet it was still somewhat of a nightmare getting it through. Although when we went for the interview, I will say he wasn't supposed to, but he kind of made it pretty clear that you're going to get approved. Don't worry. I'm just checking boxes here was pretty much, what he was doing. Because I think it was pretty obvious by that point that it's not like what people see on TV where you go in and they say, what color toothbrush does she use? What kind of toothpaste does she use? I suppose they could, but in this instance,
if they look at you and they're suspicious, they can separate husband and wife and then grill each one. But obviously when they saw you, there was something about the chemistry between you two. They knew that you were a real couple. Yeah. It's just interesting process. It can be scary too, because you're dealing with a government entity. And it's
one we don't normally deal with on a regular basis, you know.
Right.
So it's not like the police or the IRS even, where you're on a yearly basis at the minimum, you're in contact with them. So what type of people generally come to you for like adjustments of status? Who are your typical clients?
They come in a couple of categories. The first one is, again, it's an employer who, it might be a larger company, or could be, again, a smaller one. And generally, they hit a wall looking for qualified US workers. They have, again, these positions that touch the sciences or technology in some way. They don't really want to do work visas. They don't necessarily know about them. All they know is they need a special type of scientist or programmer or technology specialist. And so they recruit, and what they end up finding is that the only qualified people are people that are on H1B visas with another company. They are foreign students graduating, or sometimes they're overseas. Well, it's harder to bring people from overseas because we have to go through this H1B lottery. But if the person is here as a foreign student, or if they're already here as an H1B with another company, this is something that we can actually help them with. So that's the first category of people. The other category are people who are overseas, who are business people. So they are business owners that have successful companies in countries anywhere in the world, or they're investors that want to start up a company, maybe a tech startup, or other types of entrepreneurs. And so I can help them get a different type of visa to allow them to come into the United States, set up the company, and get visas for them and their family, get them settled. And then from there, sometimes they need me to hire, to help them hire technology workers when they can't find them in the US market.
That's really interesting. I asked this because also, like, my oldest daughter is living in Australia right now. She married someone there, and there's been some talk. He's an underground electrician, and so
Wow.
there's been some talk of them potentially coming back here, because right now in California, SCE is working on, in order to stop wildfires, they're working on taking the power lines and putting them underground, and that's exactly what he does for a living. So it'd be perfect. But it's just something I've been looking into.
Mm-hmm.
But I know going there was intriguing because they have a multiple step process. You have to apply for, I can't remember what it was called, but it's basically, I'm thinking about marrying this person.
Mm-hmm.
And they accept you for that, and they give you a year. Then
Okay.
while you're in the year, you would go through a process of a marriage visa. And so you have to, man, they had to supply photographs, emails, letters, tickets back and forth, stuff like that. And it was required. It wasn't like, send us what you can. It was, we need
Mm-hmm.
at least 5 pictures. We need at least this. We need at least that.
Mm-hmm.
But what's great about their process there is, once she turned that in, they give you an initial approval, and it's good for a year, but you can work. It's huge. But then the intriguing part is, then once they are ready to fully approve it, you have to leave the country. You have to be out. You have to enter the country, and that activates the visa. It's really different from here, but really probably a little less strict, but very detailed process. So, all right, well, why don't you? We're kind of running out of time here, so why don't you tell our people where they can find you if they need help?
Sure. They can find me at our law firm's website, which is, I'm going to spell it. It's wolfsdorf.com, WOLFSDORF.com. They can also email me at dfullmer@wolfsdorf.com, or they can call me at 310-570-4065.
I'll make sure these get into the show notes so that it's easier for people to grasp it, and I'll probably pop it up on the screen here. But thanks so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Welcome. Thanks, Michael.
This was another episode of the Technology Alchemist.